How long does a divorce take in New York? This is what we're talking about today. And I have David Traster here with me. He's an attorney who is a family law attorney and real estate. And of course, we're talking about divorce because of the involvement of real estate. And David, welcome back.
Thank you for having me.
It's always a pleasure. So let's touch base. I'll probe you with some questions that the viewers have been asking as a piggyback on about our other video, which is who gets the house in a divorce that we did. And
always a fun topic.
Yeah, exactly. Very sad, but it does happen. People want to know what is the process and how long does it take? So fill us into from an attorney perspective,
Sure.
Handling.
So there's different ways to handle a divorce. There is divorces that are contested and uncontested divorce. The thing to know for most people and for the courts is that the courts want these cases to settle. And 99% of divorces settle. They do it's settled right away, or it's settled because the courts put pressure on parties and their lawyers to settle. The courts are overburdened with the filings. There's not enough time, which we will get to in a second, about how long divorces take. So the courts want to get rid of cases if they can. So they encourage settlements. If they see parties are not settling because they don't want to, they really come down hard on the parties and their attorneys to settle. A lot of times judges may send the parties to mediation in order to force settlement. So the question becomes what? Some people, they've had discussions with their spouses and they figured everything out. Those are the best divorce cases. They're uncontested from the beginning. We could have the parties sign all the documents, we could file them with the court, and we could basically say that, look, there's no question here for the parties, just give us the divorce. Everything's been agreed to. Here's a copy of our settlement agreement, and just give us the divorce. So in that scenario, the divorce, even in that scenario, right now, New York courts are completely overburdened from COVID because they don't have enough workers. People are working from home still to this day. So they're not getting through the cases as quick as it varies by court, but for instance, New York, Brooklyn is about 12 to 14 months. New York City is about 10 to 12 months. Queens, Staten Island are probably in the same range, about 10 to 12 months. For uncontested divorce, it sounds crazy, right? Like, why is it taking so long? When I sign the papers already and everything is done, well, that's the process right now for the courts. We did find a new process a bit. It's a little bit of a trick where the law allows us to file it in different courts, and we know certain courts where the backlog is insignificant, and we file there, and we could get, if people have agreed to everything, we could get them divorced in 6 to 8 weeks. Which compared to 12 to 14 months, it's, wow, I want that. That's what we usually hear. That's part one, if parties agree. Go ahead. You have a question?
Yeah, I think that the curiosity, the question that pops in my head is, okay, let's say one of the spouses decided that they want to get divorced. They approach the other spouse, they say, okay, whatever happened, I want a divorce. From that point on, and I understand that uncontested divorce, now we have to approach an attorney right away because there's no coming to any kind of an agreement. But let's say we do agree. So you know what? Yes, you're right. Let's get divorced. What would be the process? Do you still have to hire an attorney?
There is no requirement that you hire an attorney. There are divorce packets available online from the courts themselves that allow you to do the filings yourself and all of that, but you have to sit there and figure out what you have to do. It's not just a box, divorce and letter.
It was a lot easier marriage license, right, than it is.
Absolutely, yes. It's always easier to get married than divorce. But divorce is just like any other case in court. So it's not, the marriage license doesn't even involve court. It involves a city agent. But a divorce involves a court. So you have to file the papers in court. And it's not just one paper. There are papers that the plaintiff has to file. There's papers that the defendant has to file. So people can do this themselves, but a lot of times they'll approach us and we'll help them with this process. And we'll make it clear we can't represent both spouses technically because an attorney can only represent one side, but we'll generally talk to the other spouse whether they want to have an attorney or not. Some of our clients only hire one attorney, and yes, we do resolve the case, but technically we only represent one of the parties, and the other party is something called pro se, which is they're representing themselves. All the agreements state that both parties have had an opportunity to show to an attorney, to consult with an attorney, and all of that. So the parties don't necessarily have to have an agreement right away. They could approach us and we'll help them resolve it, and we'll help them make offers to the other side and bridge the gap that exists. Other times parties come to us and say, we don't have anything. We just want a divorce. And those are the cases. And the hardest case is what you were saying, but with a little wrinkle. So one spouse comes to another and says, I want a divorce, and the other party says, I don't want to get divorced. And that's when things get a little more complicated. And at least initially, those matters start out as contested divorces, uncontested, and that's the hope that parties reach an agreement during the process. And we file the agreement and switch the case to basically an uncontested case, but initially it starts out as contested.
So what would be, and I know you mentioned that you can file in different courts right now to speed up the process, but I'm going to profile, let's say, for an example purposes, right? So, okay, I come to you, David, and I say, David, I want to divorce my husband. Can you prepare, divorce papers? I'm going to act Divorce for Dummies 101. Okay, so.
It's fine. What will happen is, let's say you call me and you say, I want to divorce my spouse. So I will basically tell you the same thing I just talked about. And I will say, okay, how do you want to proceed? We have one of two ways. One, we could send your spouse a letter and say that you've retained us to represent you in a divorce, that we'd like to resolve all issues before we file for divorce so that it's quicker, easier, and cheaper for all the parties. The other alternative is we tell you we could file, and then we could file for divorce, and then we have to serve the person, and that forces them to address the matter. Because a lot of our clients, they will say, I appreciate you trying to do the letter, to do it as quickly and cheaply as possible, but my spouse is not going to pay attention to a letter. He's going to delay it. He's not going to do anything. So until I file, he's not going to take it seriously. And look, people know their spouses better than we know them, certainly. So we'll do whatever the people want to do. So the other alternative is we will draft a complaint, summons and complaint. We will file it in court. And then we will hire a process server who serves these papers to the spouse, and then the spouse has 20 days to respond. So the spouse has to get their own attorney, and they have to file an answer in court to those papers. But initially, in that way, the case starts out as contested.
Okay, so in order to serve, it's any type of lawsuit. So you have to file it in the courts in order for that to be served. I see.
Correct. A lot of people think that if they file in court, that the court is just going to let their spouse know. That's not what happens. Like you said, it's like any other lawsuit. So you file a complaint in court, you get your index number, now you have to get it to the other side. And you have to prove to the court that they received it, so you hire a process server who's going to sure everybody has seen movies where they run up and you've been served. And that starts the clock on the other party's time to respond.
And also, the person who files is going to be the plaintiff, and the person who gets served is going to be the defendant.
Correct.
Because both parties can't be the same.
Correct. Somebody has to initiate the divorce. That person is the plaintiff.
And unrelated question, so what if just two people they don't live together for a long time? Is there like a timeline where they automatically divorced or no?
No, none of that. New York, New Jersey, they both have different causes for divorce. Everybody's familiar with adultery Everybody is familiar with cruel and inhuman treatment. So there's a number of ways. There's one of the grounds for divorce is called abandonment. Basically, if your spouse has abandoned you and the marriage and has left, and maybe you haven't seen them in 3 to 4 years, and you don't even know where they live. So you could use that ground for the divorce, but you still have to, it becomes a complicated process where you have to try to serve them in some way, but you don't know where they are. So you have to do all sorts of searches with DMVs of various states. You have to put advertisements in newspapers. It's not a great process, but we usually don't use those grounds. Most divorces we do is retrievable breakdown of marriage or irreconcilable differences. Different states call them differently, but they're the same thing. It basically means we no longer get along. We want to get divorced. So instead of having to prove that your spouse abandoned you or your spouse cheated, adultery by itself, people will say, okay, I found a text message, I know he's cheating. That's not enough in court to prove adultery. You have to show the date, the name of the person, where was it done. It's like they're almost asking you to be a spy, and that's why people hire detectives to document this and catch their spouse doing something, because just a text message is not enough legally. So even in cases where the spouse knows the spouse is cheating, a lot of times in court we'll use this irretrievable breakdown or irreconcilable differences of the marriage.
So is there a timeline? Okay, so we got to the point where the defendant was served, and now you said how many days do they have? 30 or 40? I missed that, to respond.
No, 20. If they've been served personally within New York State, it's 20 days. If they've been served by mail or outside the state, it's 30 days. So it's still fairly quick. They can't just sit on.
Okay, so now the person was served. So that means that it was filed in the court system, and we're going to, you guys have to subscribe to the channel and click on the notification bell, because on the next video, we will be talking about, now you want to know what happens after the divorce papers were filed. So we'll see you on the next video.